It's just audio.
Hello and welcome to Critical Line Item. My name's Tom Ravlick. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, a couple of years ago, some of you might have bumped into a book of mine called Rorts and Ripoffs, and in it I covered a whole heap of stuff to do with scams, poor advisors, the use of IT to commit financial crime, the works. The book's still around, by the way, in case you want to check it out via booksandpublishing.com.au. But things have advanced a bit since then, and we've had the advent of some technological critters that are enabling scammers to work more professionally and demonstrate sort of a degree of savviness than they previously had, which means some of the things we tell you to look out for in what we write and what we talk to you about will have to change. Someone who's going to help me articulate that today is at the forefront of those developments. Now, the head of the Asia Pacific area for Norton in Australia, Mark Gorry, is with me. We're going to be talking about some of the fascinating data that Norton uh, finds with the things its software stops from happening to computers like the ones you use, devices like the ones you might have Norton's on, but also some of the curious developments with the advent of AI and how that's going to make scammers look a bit more professional than they ever did before. Mark, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Much appreciated.
Now, one of the things I always do when I talk to someone new on the podcast, is just ask them to summarise their career fairly briefly. What would your career look like as an elevator pitch to somebody who never knew you before?
Well, I started. I was as a finance guy, as it turns out. Yeah, but I suppose I took a slightly different path. Straight out of university, I did my CPA program, but I got straight into tech. Straight out of university, so I got into tech. So as of next year, I'll be 30 years in tech. So sort of been around some of those older names. Bull Information Systems was the first one, the old French mainframe business. Wang Computers. Eventually ended up at Fujitsu, and then early 2000s, I ended up at Symantec. And so Symantec has evolved through that. A lot of people know Symantec. A major part of the Symantec business was the Norton business. They bought Peter Norton Labs many years prior to that. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, I've been in that business ever since, very much focused around, cyber safety and helping people. So, yeah, long sort of process in tech, which I love. I love tech, but I love being able to help people. And this sort of being in cyber safety brings those two components together. So, very lucky in that respect.
So you didn't go through the battery hen structure of the big four firms or anything like that, did you?
No, no. A number of people did, but no, I went straight in and yeah, got straight in, landed in tech, and it was funny how that happened. It was, I remember doing an interview, and it was the fact that I had been a bookmaker's clerk. Thought, oh, you must be good with numbers, and so they said, look, we want you on board, and so that's what got me into tech. Just fell into it, but yeah, it's stuck ever since.
And that's it's always interesting when you listen to people who've done the accounting qual, they've done their professional qualification, and then they end up in all sorts of curious places. Some even leave accounting and go into music, of course, but we won't. That's not what we're here for. Now, Norton's has done some interesting work in pulling together data about the types of attacks and types of things that have been stopped specifically in Australia during the latter part of the year. Now, would you mind taking us through that, Mark? It's fascinating.
Yeah, we release a report we call the Norton Pulse report. It's a quarterly report, and it just gives a view to what we're seeing happen, within different markets. And so we actually have Australia-based data. So for the December quarter, what we saw, we had to block just over 28 million attacks throughout that quarter. So averaging we're seeing about 300 threats that we're essentially stepping in and blocking on a daily basis now. And that just gives you an idea of scale that we see. And a lot of this is scams, because there's so much scam activity going on, and it is actually a big problem here. And, people have been hearing a lot more about scams, how big the problem is, and it's getting bigger. And so, yeah, a lot of those threats that we are blocking are scams. So whether it's people clicking into phishing emails that might have malicious links or attachments to them. So we essentially know that people are getting tricked because we can see it because we're having to block those. Means that people are essentially being tricked and clicking on those attacks, which just shows how easily people are tricked. And that's what these phishing scams are all about. It's tricking people into to click on attachments and links that ultimately have some sort of malicious intent to target them. So yeah, lot happening, lot happening. Yeah, like I say, a lot of it's scam related. A lot of it's mobile based now as well because a lot of people use their mobile for a lot of the common tasks. Whether it's reading their emails, they're getting text messages, they're consuming social media. So yeah, a lot of it's coming. Don't assume it's like a PC that's the problem. It's a lot of it comes from mobile devices these days.
How much work do you do um, in terms of product development and looking at issues like the way people respond, so the psychology of response? Because it appears that our impatience or our need to immediately respond to things is what sucks us in. Is there any underlying work that you do with the company to look at the way in which people can be um, coached, if you like, to stop you know wanting to hit something or respond immediately to something, because that appears to be the greatest risk.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, look, we do. A big part of this is it is education. So we obviously try and help people get on the front foot instead of dealing with the consequences after. Because yeah, with a lot of this, there is financial loss, but time is a big factor that a lot of people don't really think about. So yes, we do focus a lot on education, on trying to help people. What they should be looking out for because a lot of this is just the basics. It's you don't have to have the most complex of technology to doing some of the most basic things like updating your passwords, not using the same ones on multiple platforms and devices, and updating your operating system and app software so that it removes vulnerabilities. These are the basic things that can really make a big difference. And so, a lot of it's around education to help out with that. But we do see that in the scale of the problem is so big that yes, we definitely tackle it on the other side as well. And even more recently, we've got more involved in identity theft now, and so we have a full service that actually offers restoration assistance because the average user, once they get deep in and have problems, really have no idea where to go, what to do, on how to fix a lot of these problems. So yes, a lot of in terms of our product development, we are doing more to have a human element to help people through the process. So yeah, it's quite new in this area, but yeah, we're doing a lot more around identity now to help people when the most unfortunate with identity theft does happen. It can be very long, drawn out process to fix a lot of the issues associated with that. So definitely, there's more work that we're doing in that space now.
Um, if we could to touch on the thing I alluded to in the introduction, which is fascinating. Now, I'm familiar with the Nigerian email scams are basically that have basically over the years been written in English in poor syntax, or written in English that you can tell has come from um, a really curious source. The advent of ChatGPT and similar services, uh, yeah, kind of starts to create an environment where these guys who couldn't string three words together to save themselves, and they're going to look like PhDs. Um, what are the key problems that you see in this particular scenario?
Yeah, look, um, artificial intelligence, AI, is definitely evolving things now, and it's going to help the scammers um, a lot because, yes, yeah, I think, over the years, we started to see more and more scams, and yes, people were starting to feel more confident that they could easily identify a scam because, yes, it was poorly constructed, a lot of spelling errors, grammatical errors, and so people felt confident that they could identify those and that they weren't going to get caught with that. But definitely with the what we're seeing now with these new large language programs, they're much, much better and they're easily available. And so they can generate, a scam message that looks so, legitimate that even the AI generate, like the programmers themselves, find it difficult to identify human versus AI now. And so, yes, I think people have to come to the conclusion now that you cannot assume that you can identify a scam message. That, if you're looking for those errors that you've seen in the past, things are changing now and it's much more sophisticated and it's going to be harder and harder to identify those. So you have to be skeptical. If you're getting unsolicited messages but they look pretty real and legitimate, you have to be suspicious of these because, yeah, it's far more professional now.
Okay, one of the message on the face um, will look fairly clean. Uh, let's assume it does, um, because all you have to do is tell the chat software to produce something in the style of a utility or a service provider, and it will do so. Um, that still leaves, doesn't it, the ability for people to check, especially on a desktop, um, email addresses to see whether something is coming from an email address that looks official, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, and they can do that. But, over the years, we've also seen a lot of the spoofing techniques. So it looks pretty close, So if you have that quick glance and, yeah, oh, it looks pretty close. So there's obviously that element there as well. But definitely it's going to be harder. Definitely harder just to look at it on the face of it. Um, and so, yeah, people have to be aware that they're not going to easily pick it anymore. So they have to be skeptical. And if they do think it is potentially legitimate, they're best to, instead of doing the immediate actions, whether it's clicking on this link to go and populate some information, is check it through their own channels. So look up that organization, do your own inquiries, and just validate that it is actually a legitimate message. That's to be a safe bet.
There's a flip side to this, of course. We've been talking about the customer side of it and enhanced awareness, and for people to not move that quickly, to hit buttons and hit links and get themselves into strife. How does the evolution of AI create challenges for an organization like yours that's building solutions to try and stop things from happening at the
It,
user end?
Yeah, yeah. Look, it is. It's definitely, because we take a layered approach to security. You can't rely on one technology anymore because it's a cat and mouse game. It's scammers are always trying to come up with something, different and unique to bypass security techniques. And so we have to have a layered approach. So historically, we could look at a message and, yes, we could quite often identify a problem, just by looking at the text and, what was embedded in there. So yeah, identifying human generated text versus AI is definitely much more difficult now. Equally, even with malicious code, so the likes of Chat GPT has the ability to actually generate code as well, which is bringing other hackers into the space. And yeah, again, it's problematic because it can translate common language into less known programming languages, which may be a bit more difficult to identify. So there's other aspects to us even detecting code that makes it more challenging um, for us. But like I say, we have to keep working on the layers of technology. And so now with a lot of these phishing emails, it's the links because typically they are trying to take you somewhere else. In a lot of cases, to harvest your credentials. And so in a lot of these campaigns, where they're taking you to is familiar to us because we see so many of them. So our intelligence network can identify that, yes, we've seen this link used previously, or where this is going to, we've seen it used in previous campaigns, or even if it's a crypto scam, that we've seen the digital wallet used by the scammer in another one. So it's that intelligence that we build up from all the different scams that we see. That's what's a big part of how we can identify the threats now. But yes, we have to keep working on those layers of technology because yes, I think AI is going to make one element much more difficult to identify. So the other layers that we work on is how we keep our customers safe.
What are I guess we're talking about the layers of security, uh, layers of protection. Um, if we talk about Norton specific products, because that's where you live,
Yeah.
right? But the kinds of things that you know that people are able to do for themselves, being sort of virus checking, um, their firewall, the the other elements of the sort of web-based kind of extensions and whatever. What are the? I mean, I've only mentioned three there, but what are the kinds of things people need listening to this might need to think about as they're focused on security?
Yeah, look, when it's to these kind of scams, like I mentioned before, don't assume that you can pick it yourself anymore. I think that's the key message here, and what's the evolution of with AI now, it's becoming much more sophisticated and professional. So don't make that assumption that you can pick it. Like I say, be skeptical and think critically about what you are seeing, and challenge that, so that way you are definitely, you know, you're gonna have to do a bit of checking on some of this stuff. That's natural. Um, General advice in terms of good online hygiene: best not to be clicking on links and attachments in unsolicited messages, and that can be emails, text messages, social media posts. Same thing goes with unsolicited phone calls because a lot of the scams come through phone. Don't just give up your personal information. Um, think more about your digital self is so valuable to scammers. So think more about protecting your digital identity, your privacy. People have to think more, start giving up far less than what they have in the past. I think it is key. Um, and yeah, look, like I say, given that there's multiple aspects to this, so keeping your devices updated is key. So that if AI driven code is trying to take advantage of known vulnerabilities, that you're obviously blocking those by doing software updates. And passwords, again, part of good digital hygiene. Keep them unique. So if one is compromised, if you use the same password on everything, your other services that you use could be compromised. Is another key one. Do like those basic elements. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Mark, if somebody wants to know more about the quarterly report that is put out by Norton's, um, where could they find that type of information?
Yeah, we obviously do. We release it, through media channels, obviously, just to get the word out. But we also have blog posts on our website where we talk more about, using the current example where we're making reference to, the AI developments with GPT. Gets very, very topical, given, a lot of people are having a look at it, and it's actually pretty good. It's surprisingly good. And so we talk about what are the potential risks associated with that, whether it's, you know, um, deep fake content generation that can be used for, misinformation
Sure.
campaigns, or fake product reviews, and the phishing, scams that we've talked about, and also the malware. So there's some write-ups in those blogs that talk about those number of blogs and number of different topical areas, which is, it's good to have a read. Just it's all part of the education to help be cyber aware. And like I say, there's some pretty if you do the basics well in terms of digital hygiene, makes a really big difference.
I've been talking to Mark Gorry, who is the head of the Asia Pacific area for Norton's on a range of security issues, but mainly on how AI is going to reshape the way we start to look at scammers and what they do. Mark, thank you so much for joining me.
Great, thanks so much, Tom.
Absolute pleasure.